The call came just as the waves began to soften. I remember it clearly, the golden stretch of evening, the quiet hum of the ocean brushing against the shore, and the faint scent of coconut oil lingering in the air. I had finally allowed myself this vacation after years of putting everyone else first. Then my phone rang. I answered, adjusting my sun hat. Ruby, my daughter-in-law, didn't bother with pleasantries. "We know this beach apartment is yours," she said flatly, her tone clipped and cold, "but my parents are here. We want some privacy, so you should go to a hotel." For a moment I thought I misheard. I laughed lightly. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me," she snapped. "We want to be alone with my parents. It's just for a few days. You can afford a hotel, right?" Her words weren't just rude, they were calculated. I glanced around the apartment I had bought with my late husband's savings. Every curtain, every chair, every tile had a memory stitched into it. And now I was being asked to leave like an unwelcome guest. For a second I felt the old instinct rising, the urge to keep peace, to sacrifice, to avoid confrontation. But then something inside me shifted. I smiled. "Understood," I said calmly. There was silence on the other end, as if she hadn't expected compliance. "Good," she replied. "We'll be there in an hour." The call ended. I sat still for a long moment, listening to the waves again, but they didn't sound as peaceful anymore. They sounded like a warning. An hour later they arrived. Ruby walked in first, her chin lifted, her lips curved in a small, victorious smile. Behind her were her parents, well-dressed, polite on the surface, but carrying the same quiet arrogance. And then there was my son, Daniel. He avoided my eyes, that hurt more than anything. He said awkwardly, "It's just for a few days." "You understand, right?" I studied his face. The same boy who once clung to my sari when he was afraid of thunder. The same boy I stayed awake for when he had a fever. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. I said softly, "I understand." Ruby clapped her hands lightly. "Great, then everything's settled." She turned to her parents. "See, I told you it wouldn't be a problem." Her mother gave me a thin smile. "We appreciate your cooperation," as if I were staff. I nodded politely, picked up my handbag and walked toward the door, but before stepping out I paused. "Enjoy your stay," I said. Ruby smirked. "Oh, we will." I stepped outside, closed the door gently behind me and took a deep breath. Then I made my move. Instead of going to a hotel, I walked straight to the management office of the property. The young receptionist looked up surprised. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" I smiled. "Yes, perfectly. I just need to make a small update regarding my apartment." Within minutes I was sitting with the property manager, a man who had known me for years. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Ruby?" he asked kindly. I leaned forward slightly. "Like to revoke temporary access for all guests currently inside my apartment." He blinked. "Guests?" "Yes," I said calmly. "They are not tenants. They have no legal right to stay there." He hesitated. "Are you sure? That includes your family, doesn't it?" I smiled again, but this time it didn't reach my eyes. "Especially my family." Exactly 1 hour later my phone rang again. This time the voice on the other end was not Ruby's, it was her mother, panicked. "Mrs. Ruby, what is going on? Security is asking us to leave. They're saying we don't have authorization." I leaned back in my chair, watching the waves from the office window. "Oh," I said mildly, "that must be inconvenient." "Inconvenient," she repeated, her voice rising. "We are being asked to vacate immediately." "Yes," I replied. "That tends to happen when you ask the owner to leave her own property." Was a stunned silence, then Ruby's voice cut in, furious. "What did you do?" I could almost picture her face, flushed, eyes blazing, control slipping. "I did exactly what you asked," I said calmly. "I left." "You had no right to." "No," I interrupted gently. "You had no right to ask." Silence, this one heavier, more dangerous. 20 minutes later they were all outside the building. I could see them from the office window, arguing, packing, their composure unraveling. Daniel stood slightly apart, running his hands through his hair. For the first time he looked unsure. Good, it was time he felt something. That evening my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello." This time it was Ruby's father. His voice was no longer arrogant, it was pleading. "Mrs. Ruby, please, let's talk." I said nothing. He continued, "We may have misunderstood the situation." I asked quietly. He said quickly, "And we apologize, truly, there's no need to escalate this further." I let the silence stretch, then I said, "You asked me to leave my own home." Swallowed audibly. "It was a mistake." "No," I said softly. "It was a decision." Next words he spoke changed everything. "We didn't realize how controlling our daughter has become," he admitted. "And frankly, we're beginning to question this marriage." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yes," he said. "If she can treat you this way, what does that say about how she treats your son?" I didn't respond, because I already knew the answer. An hour later Daniel called me. For the first time that day his voice cracked. "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. Those words, I had waited years to hear them, but they didn't come with relief, they came with exhaustion. You, I asked gently. He said quickly. I should have stood up for you, I don't know why I didn't. I did, but I let him say it. I didn't want conflict, he added weakly. And now, I asked, there was a pause. I think I've been avoiding the wrong conflict, he admitted. That night I didn't return to the apartment. I stayed in a small hotel by the beach not because I had to but because I chose to. For the first time in years I felt something unfamiliar, peace. The next morning Daniel came to see me. Alone, he looked different, not just tired but humbled. I spoke to her, he said quietly. I asked. Hesitated. She said you overreacted. I smiled faintly. Of course she did. When I disagreed, she said maybe we shouldn't be together if I can't set boundaries with you. I studied his face carefully. And what did you say? He took a deep breath. I said maybe she's right. I didn't react immediately. Instead, I poured him a cup of tea and handed it to him. Our fingers brushed briefly. For a moment he looked like that little boy again. He said softly, I think I've been blind. Can do that, I replied. But this, he continued, shaking his head, this isn't love, is it? I met his eyes. I said gently, it's control. Days later, Ruby and her parents left the city without another word, without an apology, but that didn't matter anymore because something far more important had happened. My son had finally seen the truth. A week later, he filed for divorce. When he told me, his voice was steady, not angry, not bitter, just clear. I deserve better, he said. I smiled. I replied, you do. As for me, I returned to my beach apartment. I opened the windows, let the ocean air fill the rooms, and sat quietly in the space that was always mine. But this time it felt different, stronger, untouchable, because I had finally done something I should have done years ago. I chose myself. Moral of the story, respect is not something you beg for, it's something you demand through your actions. The moment you allow others to treat you like you don't matter, you teach them exactly how to value you. But the moment you stand your ground, everything changes, even the people who once took you for granted.